But what's the case with
that the reason that there are physical standards for things like law enforcement in the first place is because the idea is you need to be able to meet this minimal physical standard in order to do the job that's asked of you.
Sometimes no.
WR332, thank you very much for the $5 dono. This debate summed up: DEI exists. Why are you gay? There's a lot of white men on this panel. Prove DEI isn't effective enough. Thank you very much, WR332, for the $5 dono. Very much appreciated, man.
In some regards, but like even women firefighters still have physical standards they have to meet.
Right, but if the argument is that we've accepted that there's a bare minimum standard that you need to pass in order to qualify for this job, and then we lower that standard. Let me finish, please. I promise I'll leave you talk unfettered. I totally promise. Right? When you lower that standard, right, and say the reason we are lowering that standard is because we want a diverse, equitable, inclusive hiring policy. What that means is you have necessarily lowered. You're absolutely right. When we take any qualification for any job whatsoever, you can make an argument that the minimal qualifications you have there can be superseded in other aspects by an individual. For example, it's hypothetical that there's a 10-year-old out there that's more qualified at coding than someone for a job that requires a bachelor degree in coding. And yet the hiring practices set that standard because that's what they've agreed on is the minimum standard that they would like for that job. In order to just say, well, but those minimal standards can often be malleable and we don't consider it a DEI hire if someone doesn't meet those standards, so they artificially lower it if it's something like they're a woman, if they're a person of color, sexual orientation, etc., is nonsensical. It's nonsensical to say, well, maybe they make up for it in other aspects. A small comfort when I'm burning alive in a building and the woman can't physically get in there, but hey, she's better on the telephone than the guy.
Well, so specifically, specifically my argument with law enforcement is that there's other means to conduct that job that go beyond just physicality, to where men and women can more or less have the same results when they're doing the job, right? Like we use
there are some aspects of police work. We agree to that.
We use firearms, we use pepper spray, we use tasers, right? Like there are other ways to combat an individual, a criminal, that physically than just using like physical force.
Right. And do you know? Yes, but women always grab their gun and shoot the guy when all he has is a damn cell phone in his hand. They think it's a gun. There's all these.
Well, I want to hear.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Garet, were you speaking?
Do you know what the actual difference is in terms of the standards between men and women for law enforcement?
No, it would be different. It would be different. It would be different from agency to agency.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's like on average.
Is it push-ups? Is it like running speed? Is it running distance?
It's all of that. It's calisthenics. It's
yeah.
We know that it exists. I mean,
no. Hold on.
I know the specifics now.
Just one at a time.
Okay, so if we don't even know what the specifics are, then why are we talking about it?
We don't need to know the specifics to know that they're real. We can look up the specifics.
Knowing what the specifics are would be valuable.
We know the score of the game. I mean, we already know the outcomes.
So yeah, because one of their arguments is like, well, cops, female cops, like, well, what if they're just better doing at the paperwork or, the cognitive stuff, not so much the physical stuff. And that's why Rob brought up like, well, okay, oh yeah, but they're better at the paperwork, because that's the only argument. It's like, okay, yeah, well, men are stronger than women. Yeah, sure. But what about the cognitive stuff? It's like, okay, yeah, if you could find a role for them where it's just the cognitive stuff, then sure. But to be an actual cop enforcing the laws out in the streets, yeah, no, it should be men.
So really the specifics, that they exist. So if it's 20 push-ups or it's 2,000 push-ups, it doesn't matter.
It does matter, because there's a lot of men who can't do 2,000 push-ups, but most men can do 20 push-ups. I would say that most women
it's not about the number of push-ups. It's about that they're held to a lower standard. No, just let me finish.
I want to be sure.
Right, but I want hold
on one second. I just want to be sure that Gary gets to finish his sentence there.
So I was just wondering what the difference is. Like if you know what the difference is, if you're able to quantify that, then I think that would be valuable to add to the conversation. If we don't know what it is, I think we should just move on.
Well, I'll look it up. I'll look it up right now.
So while I was just looking that up, I do want to say, if you didn't know, we do have channel memberships. As you can see at the bottom right of your screen.
Yeah, no, there's a video I saw recently of two women struggling to it was like at a Hooters. They were like struggling to arrest one guy, and the guy wasn't even a big guy. Imagine if it was a big guy. Ooh, if they would have stood no chance. But it was like a small guy, and these two women were like struggling to get this guy in handcuffs. And finally, a worker at the Hooters, this big, tall, fucking busboy or waiter or something, I don't know what he was, but he worked there. He was this big, tall guy. Finally, just walked up and just with ease, kind of just like pushed this guy to the ground and held him so that way the women could get the handcuffs on him. It was ridiculous. And it's like, again, that was just a tiny guy. Like, imagine if it was like a big guy, they would have had no luck. And that's why you shouldn't have the women on the police force doing the active duties on the street.
80% of the physical abilities that are the necessary to hire men. Will you acknowledge, if that's the case, that the standards for women are lowered in these specific law enforcement areas, that is in effect a DEI hire? And secondly, that would be dangerous because we set those low minimal standards because we expect some level of physical fitness to be a default in order to accomplish the job of proficient law enforcement.
I have another question first before I answer yes or no.
Thank you very much for the $10 dono, WR332. Very much appreciated, brother. This angers me. The distance someone can charge you with a knife before you can recognize the threat, decide to pull the gun, aim, and fire is like 20 feet. Training and repetition is 100% the deciding factor. Yes, exactly. So I know Corbin's solution was just, but if you just give them tasers and guns, then that should solve it. But it's like, but if you're naturally just weaker than the other sex, you're going to be more reliant on those weapons. And therefore, it's going to probably cause shootings to go up, don't you think? And yes. Thank you very much, WR332, for the dono.
But again, you can execute the job without having to meet those without having to be as physically demanding or as physically fit as a man, right?
No, that's not true. We set bare minimal standards. Would you let me say
there's some aspects. Let's just agree to this. Corbin, because we're arguing semantics
against criminals other than just
Corbin, can you hear me, Corbin?
That's true too, Pumpkinhead. Yeah, I've seen videos too where they tried to tase the person. It doesn't work. It's like they just ignore it. And so tasers aren't even like 100% guaranteed to work.
Or do you just talk over me? I'm saying, let's just say, when it comes to the female law enforcement, because I don't.
For crying out loud, Corbin, when he's talking, let him finish his sentence, please.
Okay, Corbin, let's just agree. And when it comes to law enforcement, yes, like there are some women that can be detectives. There's some law enforcement aspects where women can do it. But we're talking about DEI. They're held to a lower standard, making it easier for them to get in. So there's men that would actually probably be better police officers that can't pass a test, that can't get in, but the women can. So what I'm saying is they're changing the rules. So yes, there's aspects of police work that both men and women can do. I do agree that. I'm not saying a woman can't be a cop. I don't think they can be as good a cop. We can argue that. But I'm saying I'll concede that. But that's not the argument here. The argument is about the DEI, is about how they change the requirements. It's not whether or not they can do the job equally.
No, and it's not about whether or not they do the job. It's all about this lefty mindset, this lefty worldview that, well, we need more women to be cops. We need more women to be firefighters. We need more women to be CEOs. We just need more female girl bosses. Because the reason why women aren't in these positions is because of sexism. They've been oppressed by the patriarchy and by men. Therefore, we got to make up for these wrongs by putting these women in there. So that's the whole idea behind it. So it's not even just like the standards are too strict. It's like, no, we have to have women in there because of equality and equity.
I would argue that there is this idea within DEI, right? If you're bringing on people who are unqualified, theoretically, they're not going to be able to execute the job in the same way or even remotely as good as people who are actually qualified for the job, right?
Yeah, but it's first off, I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that a DEI hire could be someone that has anything to do with the hire in the first place. For example, if me and Alex are similarly qualified for the job, but I identify as trans, I don't, but let's pretend. And they give the job to me because I'm trans. I think that also would qualify as a DEI hire. I'm willing for the sake of argument to say that we should limit the discussion to people that are less qualified. Now, the question of what is qualified and can you still be qualified if you're less qualified should be irrelevant. All that matters is that you picked someone who had less ability to complete the necessary job because you factored in something like diversity, equity, or inclusion. Now, to answer your question specifically, Corbin, presumably the reason that we have these physical fit standards is we determined that that's the level that would be necessary in order to complete the job, as has been determined by the people that set these standards with law enforcement. It's the same sort of idea. I don't know if you all knew this, but you also have to take written tests on the knowledge of law. Imagine if we said, well, you could fail the written test, but you could do way more push-ups. And there's many ways to be a police officer. And so therefore that increased physical strength could mean that you could be a successful police officer. No, that's not the case. And you could quickly see how this won't make sense, Corbin, because let's say that I'm a big fat tubbo. I kind of am. And I could barely run or anything like that. Yeah, there's other ways I could be a police officer. You know, I could sit at a desk all day and do things like that. But to get hired as a beat officer, no, I would be a danger to myself, to my partner, and to the community because they would rely on me based on what the bare standard was of getting hired in this sort of job, and I'd be incapable of completing it. And so when we lower that standard, which you've already conceded, these are DEI hires. Now the question is whether or not it's a good thing. It's not, because you are lowering the standards that have been set as the minimum that would be necessary to complete this job in a safe and efficient manner. Just because someone could be stronger and not necessarily make them a good police officer doesn't matter. You need to meet the bare minimum in order to do the minimum of the job. And these women aren't cutting it if we have to lower the requirements to 70 to 80%.
Yeah, no, I agree, Ken. Corbin's not bad at all. The only problem is that he's a leftist. That's the only thing. I think, like, I see a future with Corbin where he actually smartens up. But right now, he seems like he's a young dude. He seems like he's indoctrinated in all this bullshit. But he seems like someone that could actually smarten up. But for now, he's a dumb lefty.
What do you think is the most same rationale? Does that mean if there are, let's say, like, I don't like to body shame anyone, so I'm like, that's not my
shame
goal
away,
here.
baby.
I'm not, Rob. I'm not body shaming you. First of all, like I don't do that.
Rob, you're looking good, Rob. Have you lost some weight? I'm not.
I have.
Yeah, Rob.
Yes,
No,
thank you so much.
Well, if that's the case, then congratulations.
By the way, I've said this about Rob. Rob does look like he's losing weight, so shout out to Rob.
Congratulations. That's an order. But so let's assume that there are overweight police officers, regardless of the color. Why do they get to keep their job?
Well, it depends. On some agencies, that's not the case. There are certain physical fitness standards that you have to complete over and over, like on a yearly basis. Oftentimes, there are overweight police officers in departments that don't have these physical qualifications. For example, if you live in some town like Mayberry, maybe the hiring restrictions aren't as stringent as it would be if you're getting hired for the FBI or the NYPD. So in those cases, there could be overweight people. But to the effect that there could be someone that is allowed to have the job because they changed the standards because they happen to be overweight. Guess what? That also is DEI. It doesn't have to be limited to sexual orientation, biological sex, ethnicity. You could have DEI on a litany of things. Will you both concede this? Would it be true that if you lower the standards, in other words, you have a standard of what you say, look, a body of people have came together at the NYPD, at the FBI and said, here's the minimal we need people to qualify. You have to be able to do 40 push-ups. You have to be able to run this fast. That's the minimum we need to be a safe and effective on-the-street police officer. And if we lower those standards, forget about women, forget about races, we just lower those standards for other men, that would be, quote, lowering the standards, and that would mean that those people wouldn't be as good at that job because they can't meet the minimum requirements.
Do you think that the standards?
Why don't you answer questions? You just constantly answer with other questions.
Yeah, I know. You just always ask a question.
I'll happily answer yours. I certainly will.
Yeah.
Well, so like I'm trying to like formulate my thought process on what you're asking, but I have some clarifying questions. So I'm not trying to answer a question with another question. I'm trying to finish my thought process on what we are talking about.
We want a logger that could do 10 pull-ups. Someone can't, we say the minimum requirement is 10 pull-ups to be a logger. Alex comes in and can only do 7. They say, you know what, we like his suit. We're going to hire him anyways. Is he less qualified?
Yeah.
Okay. Would it be any different if the reason is not because Alex is wearing a suit, but because Alex is a woman? Wouldn't she be less qualified?
Sure.
That's the argument.
So I'm glad that we're hitting on the qualification part. So, Rob, specifically, what do you think is the most important aspect of being a police officer? The cognitive aspect, like you brought up the written test, or is it the physicality?
Well, I want to shut this down real quick, Corbin, because I kind of agreed with you earlier, but I actually want to backtrack real quick because, first of all, men and women.
Could Rob?
No, I want to answer my thing real quick because I just want to clarify something.
Yeah, but he asked Rob the question though.
Real quick, I want to clarify something because you're about to ask some dumb. You're going to ask some dumb stuff about.
I promise I'll answer, Corbin.
Real quick, you're going to ask some dumb stuff about women cognitively the same as men. Actually, they're not. And you know how we can prove that? In chess, there's a men's and women's division. Chess is the most cognitive thing that there is. Literally, it is just a game. And they have to separate men and women. And all of the grandmaster top chess people are always men. So just look at, if we're about to get into there's women as smart as men. Yes, women can do some stuff smarter than a lot of men. You know what I'm saying? Vice versa. There's exceptions to every rule. But
yeah, I don't think there should be a separation for chess. Like I already.
But there is. But there is, Garrett.
I understand there is.
Why is there? Why is there separation? Real quick.
Team Alex, shut the fuck up.
Corbin, I know, but you just right.
Hold on. Do you think that we hired doctors based on different standards?
Yeah, dumbass. Real quick, we do. Because listen, Corbin, yes, Corbin, listen to me. Let me talk. Let me have the floor. Let me have the floor. Let me have the floor. Corbin, when you talk about doctors,
I listen. I look forward to you not answering the question again. Go on.
When you talk about doctors, that is the biggest example of it because now we're talking about medical school. It is easier for a Black woman to get into medical school than it is a Chinese person. Yes, that is a fact. You can look this up. So in that instance, DEI is actually racist, not just towards Black people or white people. It's racist towards
my question.
All right, can I answer?
We're talking about doctors.
Right,
how can it's easier for doctors? It's easier for a Black person to get into medical school and become a doctor than me, a white guy that would have to get a higher test score on the MCAT, that would have to have a higher GPA. That's real, dude. That's 100% real. That's not a conspiracy. That there are lower requirements for different ethnicities to get into medical school. Specifically,
you brought up differences.
Corbin had a question that I think he had for Rob. I think the challenge is. Rob, could you actually describe to the audience what Corbin's question was?
Yes, his question was, what's more important when it comes to law enforcement, cognitive ability or physical ability? Is that fair, Corbin?
Yeah, okay. just to kind of get at what does it mean to be qualified.
It's difficult because both of them would have to meet a minimum cognitive. For example, if you have the strongest man in the world, but he has the intelligence of, say, a 5-year-old, then even that person wouldn't be qualified. Similarly, if you had Stephen Hawkins, who might be one of the smartest people in the world, but doesn't have the physical minimal capabilities, then that also would mean that he wouldn't be qualified. So what we need is a bare minimum. I'm even willing to concede that once you meet the minimal physical standards, that cognitively having the right temperament, the right intelligence to the job may be more important. And yet that minimal physical standard is also going to be important. So your question's sort of a red herring, because if we lower that minimal physical standard that's necessary to be a polite police officer, even if you could somehow argue that the women that we're doing that for have a better cognitive temperament and intelligence, which you have no evidence that that's the case, you're just assuming, well, maybe they have higher abilities elsewhere. There's no evidence of that, but even if it was, they're still not meeting that minimal standard, which would mean they'd be less effective police officers. And you've already conceded, or at least your opponent has, in the logging example, that this would be people that are less qualified. And given the nature of the prompt, which you've already both conceded at the beginning, that there are DEIers, now the question is, can it be a bad thing? And we're already winning that obviously it can. They are literally lowering the standards, and this is just one area of law enforcement, firefighter, physical jobs like that. I'd be happy if you concede that at least on these physical jobs that you're incorrect, and it could be dangerous. I could give you examples. I have some. If you are willing to concede that, I could happily move on to non-physical jobs and talk about why DEI is bad there as well.
No, I don't think I'm ready to concede the physicality yet. At least specifically for law enforcement, because like I said, we're arguing over what does it mean to be qualified. If the cognitive aspect, I would say is more important than physical. Is
Dude, there's no like helping these people. It's like he's not even willing to concede he's not even willing to concede the point that yeah, physically, oh yes, physically, yes, it's more better to have men on there. Like he's not even willing to concede that. And it's like it's a given. Like, no, dude, like men in general are physically stronger than women. Yes, there might be some rare situations where a woman is stronger than a man, or women could pass the tests that were originally set, the standards that were originally set. However, that's not what's going on here. Again, the mindset, the logic with the left is women, there aren't any women cops. Why is that? It's due to sexism. It's due because we need equality, we need equity. Therefore, we need more female cops. We need more female firefighters. Oh, the thing that's stopping them from joining the firefighters or the police force is because of these pesky standards that were raised that are there. Okay, so maybe if we lower the standards a bit, then maybe more women could get into the police force or the firefighting academy or whatever, the firefighters. The problem with that is when you lower the standards, then you're going to get women in there where they can't lift men out of burning buildings. They can't even arrest men in simple arrests. Like you're actually also putting women in danger. And you're doing that all in the name of this warped worldview of, but my equality, but my equity, but my inclusion. All because of that. You're putting women in danger now in situations they shouldn't be in. You're also putting civilians in danger because there might be a heavyset man that's in a burning building, and a woman's going to go in there, try to lift him up, and realize he can't. If you keep the standards where they were, and there's a woman that could pass those high standards, that's fine. If a woman could go in there and pass the high standards that were already set for men, that's all gravy. That's all good. The problem is that because of this lefty worldview, you are lowering the standards and you're putting people in danger. It's not that it's not that hard to understand. But these lefties want to pretend they don't understand, or they want to pretend no, and they want to go back and forth. On one hand, they'll say yes, women, yeah, you're right. Maybe in physical things, women shouldn't be, and then the next thing they'll go on is like, yes, but women actually can do it physically. It's like they don't know what they're saying. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they're saying. And a good job to Rob Noor and Alex Stein here. But what did you guys think? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this. And you can watch the full debate down below in the description. It is from Modern Day Debates. Subscribe to their channel as well. And I have more playlists for you with similar content that I think you'll enjoy.